Hello, this is Lucas coming back to you with another Uber story. So, this Uber story takes place downtown Indianapolis, or as we like to call it, Indy. Um, it's a pretty slow night, and I'm cruising down the strip, which is where we have about 5 to 8 nightclubs and a couple sports bars. It's a pretty fun time when it's busy. And so I'm, driving for Uber and I get a fare and I accept the fare and it's going to pick up someone named Savannah. So I accept the fare and I head around the block to go to Blue, the nightclub. And I show up in front of Blue and I look over and there's Savannah and she's walking over the car. She's, slender, blonde, probably 21, 22 years old. She comes up to the car and she's like, look, I'm trying to wrangle my sister. She's not really wanting to leave, but we have to leave now. And so I'm going to attempt to get her in the car. So she goes over to her sister, who's like grinding on the walls, grinding on the poles, grinding on everything. She definitely looks like she took something and is not in her right mind. And, Savannah is just trying to get her over towards the car. And very quickly, I realized like this person is not in her right mind. She's not functioning right. And Savannah comes back over the car and she's like, look, I'm really sorry, but I don't think I'm going to get her in the car right now. So, you can just go ahead and in the fare and take off. And I'm like, okay. And Savannah's like, oh, I feel so bad. Here's like, $8. So she gives me $8. And I start driving to the corner and I'm thinking, did I just dodge a bullet? Like, is this a good thing that I'm not there and I'm not their driver? And just as I finish that thought, I get a fare, Savannah. And so I'm thinking, as I'm driving around the block, I'm thinking, okay, they got her hogtied. They got her ready to go. Like they got her in her right mind. And the older sister is ready to go. So I go around the block, I come back and I look and I'm like, oh, they are still just the same as that I was when I left them. And only this time now there's two guys standing outside and Savannah's older sister is grinding on them. And, Savannah is trying so hard to get her to come to my car. And, her sister's a little bit bigger than she is, probably 27, 28 years old. And Savannah is now getting more and more pissed off and more aggressive with every attempt to get her towards the car. And at one point, Savannah had the older sister at the door of my car, and like a cat to water, she sprung back like 3 feet and was like, runs right back to the two guys, starts grinding on them. And Savannah is just screaming and screaming at her, like, get in the car, get in the car, get in the car. And the older sister is just like living her best life. She is just on one. And that's when the two guys like notice that I'm an Uber driver. They notice the situation. They're like, okay, we have to help. And good on them, like good on them. And so they start walking towards my car, and Savannah, of course, is grinding on them. And that's when I hear Savannah's like, Savannah's not grinding on them. The older sister is. And that's when I hear the older sister, she's like, I'm going to go home with them. Like, I'm going to stay with them. These are my guys, we're going to have so much fun. And Savannah's like, no, get in the car. They don't like you. They don't want you. You don't know them. They're strangers. Get in the car. And the guys just keep getting closer and closer and closer to the door of my car. And finally, Savannah's older sister comes flying into my back seat, almost smacks into the side of my door behind my seat, and just starts screaming. And that's when Savannah jumps in the back seat, shuts the door, and that's when I find out she has a boyfriend who gets in the front seat, who was doing absolutely nothing to help. I mean, this guy did nothing. So now boyfriend's in the front seat, Savannah's in the back seat, older sister's behind me, screaming, fighting, and all I'm thinking is get to the interstate, get some good music playing, calm them down. So I am gunning it to the interstate, and that's when I look back and Savannah's older sister has her in a headlock and is punching the top of her head. Boom, boom, boom. And I'm talking punches. And that's when Savannah is like almost starting to whimper. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I need to separate them. Why did the two of them get in the back seat? And now I'm entering the on ramp to the interstate. I'm going around, I'm coming up, I'm getting onto the interstate, and we have a solid 30-minute drive, solid 30. And we start driving, and that's when I hear them fighting even more in the back. And I look back, and Savannah's head is smashed into the window by her older sister's foot. Her foot is crushing her face into the side of my car. And that's when I look at the dude, the boyfriend, who once again is doing nothing to help because all he's doing is escalating the situation. So I tell the dude, I'm like, look, we got to separate them. One of them's coming up front. You're going back there. And he's like, yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay. So we pull over on the side of the interstate, and there are cars flying by us so fast that my car is shaking. Boom, 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 boom. And boyfriend, being an idiot, once again, gets out of the car, goes around to Savannah's older sister's door, which is facing oncoming traffic. He opens the door, and all I'm thinking is the older sister's going to get out of the car and she's going to run into oncoming traffic and die. So literally, my mind is running so fast. I'm just like, oh my God. And I look back at Savannah's older sister could not get her seatbelt undone. I don't know how she got her seatbelt on. I don't know why she got her seatbelt on. In her state of mind, somehow she thought, I need a seatbelt. And so she can't get the thing unclicked. And I'm watching her push down towards the red release. And my heart is pounding. My mind is going into slow motion. And all I'm thinking is, we cannot let her get out of the car. We cannot let her get out of the car. And just as the seatbelt clicks to release, I yell back at her. I say, you crawl over and get in the front seat. And I grab her hand, and she crawls over and gets in the front seat. And as soon as she gets in the front seat, she goes, fuck, and throws her phone into my windshield, scratching it a good inch and a half. And at this point, I'm just like, okay, here we go. So I gun it back onto the interstate, and now we are driving 30 minutes north. And just at that moment, like a breath from the universe, a song plays on the iPod that the older sister is like, oh, this is my favorite song. And then all of a sudden she just mellows all the way back down. Boom. And that's when she looks at me and she's like, this is my guy. I'm in love with this guy. We're gonna date, whatever. She grabs my hand and she's like holding my hand. I'm like pulling my hand back. She's like rubbing my hand on her breasts and like on her leg, and I'm pulling my hand back. I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. So we keep driving, and then I started to notice something would happen every time Savannah and her boyfriend would get physical in the back seat, make out, whatnot. The older sister would start to rage up. So she'd get more and more pissed. And I'm like, okay, something's going on there, So we keep driving, and the older sister continuously plays the same song over and over and over again, as if she had never heard it before. And each time it would come on, she'd be like, oh, this is my favorite song. And so I get to the destination, and I was like, oh, so, do one of you guys live here? And Savannah's like, no, this is my parents' house. And that's when the boyfriend and Savannah hop out of the car. Um, and then everything flip flops. Now it's the reversal. Savannah locks the front door, or the older sister locks the front door, and Savannah's now pulling on the front door, and she's like, "Get out of the front seat! Get out of the front seat!" And the sister's like, "No, I'm not getting out of the front seat." And she looks over at me, and she's like, give me your phone number, give me your Facebook, give me your Instagram. We should be dating, blah blah. Blah. And I'm like, calm down, calm down. And Savannah's just screaming at her sister again, get out of the front seat, get out of the front seat, get out of the front seat. And that's when I give Savannah the one finger, give me a minute. And I say, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to give you my Facebook. I'm not going to give you my phone number. We don't know each other. We're not going to date. But I think that, you have something more going on. Do you want to talk about it? And that's when she just breaks down crying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. What's going on? Do you want to talk about it? And she's just sobbing and sobbing. And she's like, my fiance just broke up with me, and he kicked me out of our house, and now I live back with my parents, and my life is over. It's ruined. It's a mess. She's like, he was a plastic surgeon athlete. That's what she said. I think that was more of the drugs talking, maybe, but yeah, plastic surgeon athlete. Um, and I'm just like, okay, that's interesting. I guess she had been dating the guy for over 7 years, and he finally proposed, and they had a wedding set and everything. And at the last minute, he just pulled out, and her world just crumbled around her. And so in her sobbing, teary state, I just started filling her with positivity. I was like, look, for all you know, you're going to look back at this time and you're going to laugh and you're going to say, this guy was never right for me. This guy was not the one. And the person I'm with now is the result of him leaving. And you're a great person. You're going to find someone. And I just started filling her with positivity. And all of a sudden she just changes and she starts smiling, and she's like, you know what, you're right. And she just opens the door and walks into the house. Savannah comes running out, and she's like, oh my God, thank you so much for talking to her. Like, she's going through a lot, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And that's when, Savannah tips me $40, and I'm like, I don't need that. And she's like, no, take it. You've earned it. Like, you did so well. And I'm like, okay, thank you. And I was like, have a good night. And I drove to the stop sign, and I just sat in utter silence, trying to process everything that just happened. And I got a big smile on my face. And I thought, you know what? Now I have a story. And that's what happens every time I have a super stressful situation, something that is, in the moment, so chaotic, so horrible, so insane that you don't know if you're going to get through it. But when you do finally get through it, you can look back and you can say, you know what? There's something in this. And you would think that would be the end of the Savannah and her older sister story. Think again. So I continue to drive for Uber, and every time I go out now stronger, because I dealt with the craziest person on the planet. I dealt with the craziest ride. I dealt with a ride where it tested all of my abilities to maintain calm, maintain a level of peace, and be able to think on my feet really quickly, and save a life potentially. So I felt like it just boosted me up. And so I continued driving, night after night after night. And I think it was like 11 months after I picked up Savannah and her older sister, I pick up these two college girls, and everyone wants to know, what's your craziest Uber story? What's your craziest Uber story? And I had been telling that story. And so they asked me, and I begin to tell the Savannah story. And they stop me and they're like, wait, does Savannah look like this, and that? And I'm like, yeah. How did you know that? And they're like, well, I think we know Savannah. I'm like, no. So I continue talking, and then they're like, does the older sister look like this and that? I'm like, yeah, that's so strange. And they're like, yeah, we definitely know Savannah and her older sister. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So they get on their phone and they go onto Facebook. And as I'm telling the story, they show me a picture of Savannah and her older sister, and I almost lost my shit. I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That's them. I haven't seen them in 11 freaking months. And they're like, yeah, her older sister is known to do that. Like, that's something she does. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? And they're like, yeah, you weren't the only one to deal with the crazy older sister. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense. So I take them, drop them off, and about a month later, almost a year to the date, I get a fare, and who should it be but Savannah? And I'm thinking, this cannot be her. There is no way this is her. So I I I go, and I sit out in front of this house, and I'm waiting for Savannah to come out. And I've like I said, I'd been driving for 12 months, a year, since I picked them up. So I've picked up a handful of Savannahs, and every time I'm like, is this her? Is this her? And each time, nope, not her. So I'm sitting there. It's probably, 10 o'clock at night. And I'm watching this slender blonde chick walk out of this house. And I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, oh my God, that's Savannah. Oh my God. And she gets into the front seat and she looks at me and I look at her and I'm like, it's you. And she's like, it's you. And I'm like, oh my God, like, um, how are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I'm good. I'm good. She's like, I thought for sure you would never be driving for Uber. I'm like, again. And I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, after that night, I thought for sure you would have given up and quit because of how crazy it was. And I was like, no, like that made me a better driver. It made me a stronger driver. It made me a more aware driver. And I should be thanking you and your older sister. And she's like, oh, that's so cool. I'm so glad you're still driving. I thought for sure, you would have quit. And I was like, no, I tell everyone about that story. And she's like, oh, that's so cool. And I was like, okay, what's going on with your older sister? How's she doing? And she's like, oh my God, my sister's doing so well. She's got her own place now. She's got a steady job. She finally found someone that, is really working for her. And, everything is going well for the older sister. And I was just like, oh, this is the closure I needed. This is the closure. And that's the end of my Savannah and older sister story. All right. Well, once again, that was a Uber story. I will definitely have more to come. I think I picked up over 10,000 people during my Uber driving. So I will slowly filter through all of those stories and have them ready for your ears. Once again, I thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you in the next one. Bye-bye.